I had an arranged marriage. My father-in-law, Tyler, is a savvy businessman who runs several supermarkets. My mother-in-law, Julia, is eccentric and quiet. Our marriage started to cool after my miscarriage, and then my husband, Eric, had an affair. I was devastated, but it was Julia, the eccentric one, who saved me. My name is Hannah. I'm 33 years old. I got married 10 years ago, and I live in my in-laws' house with my parents-in-law and Eric. We don't have any children. Eric and I had an arranged marriage. At the time, I lived with my parents and my brother. My family had lived in the area for generations, and my dad was the president of the homeowners association. This meant that we often had people coming to our house asking for favors or advice. One day, a matchmaker named Shannon, who loved setting people up, came to our house. She said that the son of a local supermarket chain owner was looking for a wife, and asked if we knew anyone suitable. I thought it had nothing to do with me as I served coffee and snacks. So, when my dad suddenly turned to me and said, "Hannah, why don't you meet him?" I was shocked. I had never dated anyone, and after graduating from college, I stayed home to help with the housework. All the housework alone with all the guests we had. My mom taught me how to cook and take care of the house. My hobbies were cooking, reading, and crafting. I was an introverted and reserved person, so my dad might have been worried that I wouldn't meet anyone. He's the son of the founder of several supermarkets, and he's 30 years old. It's a good match. Just meet him. He's a pretty good-looking guy," he said, showing me a photo. He looked serious and likable. He even resembled one of my favorite actors a little. Shannon, the matchmaker, added, "I think you'd be perfect for him, Hannah." Ignoring my opinion, she half-dragged me to a photo studio to take my picture. I tried to protest, but Shannon cut me off. "If you don't like him, you can say no after you meet him," she said, but I felt pressured to comply. Even my mom said, "It's okay. If you don't like him, I'll turn him down for you. Just enjoy some good food." She took me to the department store to buy a new dress. "You don't have a boyfriend, and you don't wear makeup. Dad is worried," she said. The following year, Dad planned to retire from his position as president of the homeowners association, and my brother was getting married and moving in with his wife. My parents were worried I wouldn't have a place in the house. They thought it would be better for someone like me to get married if I found a good match. On the day of the meeting, I had my hair done and makeup applied at the salon, and wore the dress Mom and I picked out. I looked like a different person. "You're much prettier than your photo," Eric said, and I was flattered. Shannon was quickly rattling off our introductions, but I barely heard her. Then, she said, "Well, I'll leave you two young people alone." "People really say that line, huh?" I said in surprise. "No, I don't think people say it much these days. She's an old-fashioned type," Eric said with a laugh. His smile was so charming, I wondered why someone like him would consider an arranged marriage. Seeing my puzzled expression, Eric explained, "Shannon has been a friend of Dad's since they were kids. She knew I was still single at 30 and kept pushing me to get married. Dad told me to humor her once, but I'm glad I came because Hannah turned out to be wonderful." Hearing this, I couldn't help but say, "Me too." It was a bit frustrating that Shannon's plan worked out, but Eric and I ended up getting married. We had a grand wedding and reception with lots of guests, and our honeymoon was in Europe. Amidst all the busyness, those days felt like a dream, and my new life began. Tyler was a bright, dependable man with a hearty voice. Julia was quiet and reserved, often staying in her room. Despite the large house, I was surprised to find that a housewife had her own room. Right after we got married, Julia said to me, "I'm not good at housework, so I'll leave it to you, Hannah. We have a housekeeper who comes twice a week for the cleaning." This also surprised me. I had expected my mother-in-law to instruct me in detail on cooking, cleaning, and the household ways. True to her word, Julia didn't involve herself in any housework, ate my cooking without complaint, and went back to her room after meals. However, I didn't think she disliked me because sometimes in the afternoons, she would make tea and we would enjoy delicious cake together. "You should brew tea with boiling water. Wait until the leaves open fully." The tea she made was always fragrant and delicious. Julia, who usually didn't talk much, would chat quite a bit during these times. "What do you usually do in your room, Julia?" I boldly asked. "I research things on my PC, read books, and watch movies." She was a completely different type of person from my mom, who was always bustling around taking care of people and doing housework. "Do you think it's extravagant for a housewife to have her own room?" Julia asked, seeming to read my mind. "It used to be Tyler's room. But he said he got lonely and had nothing to do alone, so he was always in the living room. So, I decided to take it." Her gentle smile made me like the slightly eccentric Julia. A year of peaceful and happy newlywed life passed, and I became pregnant. Eric, Tyler, Julia, and my parents were all delighted, and I think this was the happiest time of my life. However, shortly after telling everyone, I had a miscarriage. The doctor said, "Early miscarriages are common. You're still young, so don't be too discouraged." Everyone comforted me, but I was deeply shocked. I had always thought it was natural for a woman to get married, become pregnant, and have children. It was only when I found myself in this situation that I realized some couples can't have children, and there are many complications with pregnancy and childbirth. "I'm sorry, Tyler, Julia." I apologized. "Why are you apologizing? You're the one who is suffering the most." I felt saved by the kindness of Julia, who hugged me and tried to comfort me. I read many stories on websites and in magazines about women who successfully got pregnant and gave birth after a miscarriage. So, I thought I would be fine too. I believed I would get pregnant again soon. But after that, I couldn't get pregnant, and I started to feel more and more anxious. Looking back now, I realize I became obsessed with the idea of getting pregnant. I was filled with ugly emotions, wanting to make up for my failure and not wanting to be seen as a useless wife who couldn't have children. It was probably inevitable that Eric began to avoid me, as I had turned our relationship into an obligation. But I never imagined Eric would cheat on me. Even when I found a receipt from a fancy restaurant in Eric's suit pocket, when his suit smelled unfamiliar after a business trip to another state, or when I noticed a few CDs in the car that were definitely not his taste, I never suspected he was cheating. I noticed he started using WhatsApp frequently to chat with someone, but I couldn't bring myself to voice my suspicions. Around that time, Tyler had a stroke and survived, but he was left partially paralyzed and had to retire from work. Eric was to take over the company. For a while, he was acting president. Julia and I took care of Tyler at home. "Hannah, if it weren't for you, I would have put him in a home." Julia said this while she dedicated herself to caring for him. At that time, I felt that there was love between Tyler and Julia. In contrast, what about us? We've been married for 10 years, and now we have separate bedrooms and hardly talk anymore. Eric, who took over as president, started to stay out more, citing his busy schedule. When he did come home, "This house is so depressing. A half-paralyzed dad, a weirdo mom, and a gloomy wife. It's unbearable, he would complain. Recently, I had become certain that Eric was cheating. He didn't even bother to hide it anymore, making calls to another woman right in our home. He said it was a business contact, but his expressions made it clear that wasn't true. Where did I do wrong? If only I hadn't miscarried back then. Though it's pointless to think about it now, maybe becoming obsessed with getting pregnant was my mistake. Was it my fault for avoiding facing Eric and not confronting him when I first suspected his affair? By the time I realized it, it felt like it was too late to turn things around. One day, I opened a slip of paper I found in Eric's suit pocket after a business trip, and it was a drawing of Dad by a small child. My vision went dark, and I felt like I was going to collapse. From the look of the drawing, the child seemed to be about 4 or 5 years old. The adorable drawing with clumsy letters spelling Dad cut deep into my heart. "Hey, what are you doing, snooping around like a thief?" Eric's cold words greeted me as he entered the room. "Oh, that. The kid must have slipped it in my pocket. Kids, you know, what can you do?" Eric said this nonchalantly, without any hint of remorse, looking at the slip of paper in my hand. "You knew, didn't you? That I have another woman." "I knew. But to think you have a child too." The existence of a child I could never have with him crushed me. "Yeah, right. The kids are adorable, you know. You're basically just a housekeeper, so you can leave if you want. I'll cover the alimony in the divorce settlement." If I got divorced and left, Eric would probably remarry his mistress. Considering there's already a child involved, maybe that's what's best for this household. The next morning, as I prepared breakfast for Eric with my tear-stained face, he clicked his tongue in annoyance and left for work without eating. I managed to cool my swollen face enough to be presentable before going to see Tyler, but when I arrived, Samuel was there and gave me a look of surprise, which made me feel very embarrassed. Samuel, who serves as Tyler's personal assistant, is a man in his 40s. I've known him since I got married 10 years ago, but I've never seen him smile. He's always impeccably polite and never seems to get ruffled by anything. "Well, I'll take my leave now." Samuel said this and left, as he always did. Gathering my courage, I decided to talk to Tyler and Julia about what I had been thinking about last night. "Hannah isn't going anywhere." Julia said this without changing her expression. "What?" "But Eric broke the rules first. You're not to blame. If I had to assign fault, it would be about 80 to 20, no, 90 to 10 in favor of Eric being at fault." "But we couldn't have children." "That doesn't matter. You're a good wife. Besides, if you leave, it'll be hard for me to take care of Tyler alone." I looked over to see Tyler nodding in agreement. "Can I stay in this house?" "Of course, if you want to leave, I won't stop you. It's your choice." Making my own choice. I had always gone along with what others said, pretending not to notice even when I had things I wanted to say. I want to stay here." For the first time, I felt like I had clearly expressed my own will. 6 months later, Tyler had another stroke in his sleep and passed away. Julia handled the funeral herself, not leaving it to Eric, and remained dignified throughout. Eric attended to the mourners with a solemn face, but he didn't seem particularly sad. A little while after Tyler's death, I noticed something was off with Julia. Instead of staying in her room upstairs, she started spending most of her time sitting on the living room sofa, staring blankly at the TV. She wouldn't change the channel and just watched whatever was on, even comedies, without laughing. Eric, seeing Julia like this, said, "Did she get dementia after Dad died? Give me a break." He said this loud enough for Julia to hear. how can you say such a thing? Aren't you worried about her? When I confronted him, he said something shocking. What's more surprising is that you're still here even after Dad's caregiving is over. Are you just after the inheritance? The thought had never crossed my mind, and it made me really sad. Around that time, Julia tried to go out into the garden but fell at the front door, spraining her ankle. She had trouble moving around the house, so she had to use a wheelchair. It's a spacious house, so there wasn't much to bump into, but it's old and not very accessible. Every small step would stop the wheelchair, so I had to lift it slightly each time. Eric came home from work and saw it, but instead of helping, he said, "A sprain? If you can't walk, your dementia will get worse. I don't want to take care of Mom until she dies, so good luck." I was furious at this. What's wrong with you? Is that something a son would say? Yeah, you keep racking up points. I'll give you a bit of the inheritance, so do your best. With that, Eric walked out. He probably went to the house where his mistress and child were waiting. I felt so angry and frustrated that I almost cried. Suddenly, Julia burst into laughter. Huh? Julia? What's going on? For a moment, I thought Julia had really lost her mind. Then Julia said clearly, "Oh, it's hilarious. Such a foolish son. I've made up my mind. Let's start by selling the house." What? Julia took out her mobile phone from her pocket and called Samuel. While I was bewildered by what was happening. I'm sorry, Hannah. I was feeling down after Tyler passed, but I don't have dementia. I was just deep in thought. What? But you didn't react at all while watching TV. That's because it wasn't interesting. Samuel came over with some documents. Since Eric became acting president, the company's performance has not been good. Not only have sales in each store decreased, but employee morale has also dropped. The main reason is that you and the president retired from management, but Eric's spending habits are also a significant issue. He showed Julia some data. What? What does this mean? I couldn't help but ask. The real manager of our company has been Julia. Samuel replied with a surprising response. The company's growth has been due to the president's charisma and Julia's management skills. And Samuel, thanks to you as well. You filled in where we were lacking. So, Julia staying in her room was. All the store data and surveillance camera footage can be seen on the room's PC. It's true I was reading books and watching movies, too. But why? Couldn't you be vice president or something? I'm not cut out to be a leader, Julia said, looking into the distance. She was probably seeing the image of the late Tyler. I've seen Eric's true colors. I can't trust him with the company. I can't let go of this land or house. Samuel, won't you become president? Is it really that easy to hand over the presidency? No, like you, I'm not suited to be a leader. Yes, that's a problem. Then, Hannah, you should become president. What? I couldn't understand what Julia was saying. It was impossible for someone like me with no social experience to suddenly become president. When I said that, it's fine. Samuel will support you. I have a good eye for people. Hannah has the charm to make others want to help her. That's all you need to be a president. Hannah is kind and considerate, and there's a trend of welcoming female leaders, so it'll be fine. Even Samuel said such things. But there's a real son. When I said that, another surprising truth was revealed. Eric is not our biological son. Tyler and Julia couldn't have children. Back when infertility treatments were not as advanced, Many people blamed the woman for infertility, and Julia seemed to have had a really tough time. It turned out the problem was on Tyler's side, but by the time we found out, I was already over 40, so we adopted. Eric was already 5 years old when he came to this house, so he should know that. Is that why he can be so mean? Because they're not his real parents? I said I have a good eye for people, but kids are different, aren't they? Oh dear, that makes it sound like we raised him poorly, Julia said with a wry smile. Anyway, Eric is a failure both as a manager and as a husband. Samuel has gathered enough evidence, including proof of his affair, that he can't refute. He will have to leave both the company and this house. If Julia says so, it will surely happen. Samuel, sell this place quickly. I'd like to live in a high-rise apartment, but city life sounds exhausting now. There are quite a few high-rises in this town, so one of those would be nice. Climbing stairs is such a hassle as you get older. Huh? Is that why you've been staying in the living room so much? It's partly because I retired from management, but this house only has a bathroom on the first floor. Old people have to go to the bathroom frequently, Julia said, pouting. I found her a little adorable in that moment. So, Hannah, are you going to be the president or not? I will, I answered without thinking. I thought this might be a big chance. A chance to change my personality and my life. On the day of my inauguration as president, Eric barged in, looking furious. What is this? What's going on? I got a call from Samuel out of the blue yesterday, and when I went to the house, it was being torn down. I'm the president. How is this woman supposed to be the president? He shouted in front of the employees. You were only acting president. Based on the company's performance and the evaluation from the employees during your tenure, it was concluded that the company can't develop with you as president, I said, without changing my expression. I had practiced in front of the mirror many times last night. Also, your tailored suits and dinner expenses were all paid for by the company. We could sue you for embezzlement. There were sounds of surprise and mocking laughter from the employees. Damn it! You'll pay for this! Leaving a line fit for a villain, Eric fled the venue. I apologize for the unsightly scene. I lack knowledge and experience, but with everyone's help, I aim to make this a better company. Please support me. When I said that and greeted them, there was applause. After the inauguration ceremony, when I left the venue, Eric was waiting outside. Hey, don't mess with me. What happened to the house? That house and this company are mine. No, they'll be mine when Mom dies. Violence is not the answer. Samuel twisted the arm of Eric, who grabbed my collar and yelled. Ouch! Let go! What the hell are you? Just a secretary. Even a mere secretary is far more competent than a foolish son. Julia, whose sprained ankle had healed, walked over and said firmly, That house and the land have already been sold, and there's no place for you in this company anymore. You've been a son for a long time, so I'll give you your legal share of the inheritance. Use that money to start over somewhere far away. Inspired by Julia's resolute attitude, I also spoke up. Here, the divorce papers. I've already signed them. I said this and thrust the divorce papers towards him. And finally, Samuel said, Oh, by the way, it seems the child of your affair partner isn't Eric's son. You might want to check on that. What? No way. That's impossible. Leaving the stunned Eric behind, we walked away from the scene. Later, I heard that when Eric confronted his affair partner, she confessed readily, and he threw her out. Samuel told me that Eric, now alone, was drowning his days in alcohol with the inheritance he received. I think he got enough money to open a new store, but at this rate, he'll lose both his money and his health. Even hearing this from Samuel, I didn't feel any sympathy for him. The view from the top floor is really amazing. Julia said this while looking out at the night scenery from the large window of our new high-rise apartment. The first and second floors housed commercial facilities, including a supermarket, a bookstore, a florist, a hospital, and even a veterinary clinic. By the way, the supermarket is a slightly upscale one that our company has newly launched. If only Hannah and Samuel would get married, I wouldn't have any regrets. Julia blurted out another outrageous statement. Oh, Julia. Things won't always go the way you say. Right, Samuel? That's right, Julia. Really, you are incorrigible. I'm already 45, and Hannah is just 35. Looking at Samuel beside me, I noticed he was slightly blushing. Oh, what's a 10-year difference? Tyler and I had about the same age gap. Samuel, every time you come over, you always seem to be thinking about Hannah. That's because Eric's behavior was just too terrible. It was the first time I saw Samuel flustered. 3 years later, much to my frustration, or rather, to my delight, Julia's wish came true. I said then that I wouldn't have any regrets, but now I do. I get to see my granddaughter's face. Julia said this as she lifted the newborn girl. Even though she's not connected by blood. Now my husband, Samuel, added something unnecessary. That doesn't matter. Both you and Hannah are my precious son and daughter. Julia smiled as she held her granddaughter. Meeting this person was truly a blessing. I thought so from the bottom of my heart. That factory seems to be more valuable than I thought. I used to think it was boring, but maybe I was wrong. If I had known, I might have taken a job there. Since we're family, promotion would be guaranteed. Returning home from the funeral, I was shocked to hear my husband and son talking. I work at the factory Dad ran, but my husband and son, who work at a major trading company, had always looked down on the factory. However, seeing the large number of people who attended Dad's funeral, their attitudes changed. It's infuriating to think they might consider taking a job at our factory just for fun, thinking they'd automatically get promoted because they're family. There are people who earn their livelihood and take pride in their work at that company. I can't stand the idea of those people being insulted because of me. Quietly, I decided to pack my things. I won't ever come back to this house again. I'm Jessica. I was born and raised as the only daughter of a small factory owner. My husband's name is John. John was a salesperson at a trading company, and we got married about 30 years ago and had a son named David. David, influenced by Dad, grew up to be a sociable and outgoing child. But more than outgoing, he's flashy and loves to show off. Before we got married, I found John's flashy nature refreshing and attractive, but after we got married and David grew up to be the same way, I felt out of place. What worries me most is their sense of money. They both spend money recklessly, often putting a strain on our finances. We've had countless arguments about it, but we've never been able to see eye to eye. I never imagined this dissatisfaction would lead to such a big issue. I've always worked at the factory Dad ran. Having worked there for so long, I've been entrusted with the position of managing director. Dad wanted David to help with the factory management, but young and flashy David was more interested in the trading company's sales job where John worked. I like talking to people, and I think I'd be good at sales, David said to Dad, but behind his back. I hate the idea of working at a boring factory, I heard him say. Dad seemed to sense David's feelings and stopped talking to him about the factory after that. It was painful to see Dad's disappointed back, but neither John nor David were interested in the factory management. treating it as a small subcontracting business from the start. It's upsetting to have the factory, which Dad and I value so much, looked down upon. However, I gave up trying to argue with John, knowing our perspectives were too different. We're going on a road trip with some friends soon. I'm thinking of buying a motorcycle and taking David along. What? But motorcycles are expensive, aren't they? Are you buying it? Jessica, you'll chip in half. As a dual-income couple, we had agreed to split living expenses, but any other money we earned could be spent freely. You can't just spring this on me. Seeing my reluctance, John raised his eyebrows. He's a salesperson too, so networking is important. It's for David's sake, come on. All right. But along with the motorcycle, can you take David to visit Grandpa once in a while? He seems to be feeling worse again and might have to go to the hospital for a bit. Seeing his grandson might cheer him up. My dad was still energetic enough to run the company, but age was catching up, and he had been in and out of the hospital recently for short stays and tests. Mom passed away a few years ago, so I worried about Dad living alone. However, John responded indifferently to my plea. Yeah, well, I'm really busy right now, but I'll get to it eventually. I'm talking about David, you know? Lately, John gets irritated whenever I point something out. This time too, he immediately glared at me with a displeased look. Stop nagging! We talk about work a lot, so I know what's going on. Both he and I are in sales. I need to teach him my techniques. Hearing that, I started to think that both of them just wanted an excuse to have fun. For a long time, John used to be away from home a lot, claiming it was for work, leaving me to handle childcare and housework almost entirely by myself. David, seeing his dad like that, would often say outdated things like, "That's just how men are." I'm worried that with this kind of attitude, he might never get married. Anyway, that's how it is. Take care of the motorcycle thing. Okay. Later, I found out that David had met with my dad behind my back. David came by unexpectedly. I thought something was up, but he just wanted money to buy a motorcycle helmet. Hearing that casually from Dad, I felt troubled. Really? John told me that David asked for half the money to buy the motorcycle. David said he would buy the helmet himself. Well, he's my cute grandson, so I gave him the money. Like many grandfathers, my dad is also lenient with his grandchildren. However, as he grew older and saw more of their selfish behavior, his patience was wearing thin. Even though he's my son, I was also getting fed up with his selfishness. And the same could be said for John, who I married out of love. John never helped with housework or childcare, always claiming he was busy with work but spending his time playing. Back then, my mom was still around to help, and my workplace was understanding, so I managed, but now I was feeling my affection for him fading. Jessica, I'm sorry, but I'll have to be admitted to the hospital again. Please take care of the company. All right, I understand. Honestly, I'm starting to think about divorce. I can't rely on David to take over the factory, and he probably doesn't want to either. It might be better to find someone, even if they're not family, to take over. I'll talk to Dad about it after this hospital stay. I'm sure he'll agree. Since Dad was admitted to the hospital, my days have been hectic with work and caregiving. Everyone at the workplace has been helping to keep things running. It's busy, but thinking about how proud I want to be when Dad comes home keeps me going. The real problem is caregiving. John and David continue to use work as an excuse not to visit the hospital. Ever since I scolded David for asking Dad for allowance money, he's been in a bad mood. John sides with David. Despite being grown men, they only visit Dad when they need money, which makes me want to cry out of frustration. Did I raise him wrong? Jessica, don't say that. You've done your best, don't worry too much. Dad, weak from being in the hospital, tried to comfort me. At times like this, I feel I can't go against Dad. I was deeply dissatisfied that John and David didn't respect Dad. I might not be able to leave the hospital this time. Dad, don't say such things. My voice was almost a scream. I had a hunch. And the company was running smoothly. Thanks to Dad's foresight, he had already allocated the work in advance. No, I'm too old now. I've prepared and accepted it. I'll leave the company to you. Even if I get out of the hospital, I'll retire. Dad. I couldn't say anything more. Dad had worked hard on the front lines for years. As he had declared, he never left the hospital. Dad passed away a month later. It was a peaceful end. It felt like I had lost my only ally in this world, and I clung to Dad, crying for a while. But I couldn't just stand still. I had to do what needed to be done. Everyone at the company was willing to help. The problem, of course, was John and David. Charles passed away? That's unfortunate. I thought you didn't even visit him in the hospital, as I saw their regretful faces. Swallowing my words, I proceeded with the funeral preparations. Why do we need such a big funeral home? A small family and relatives-only ceremony is enough. Yeah, let's just see him off with just us. The company people and business partners will come. We can't do that. You two always say how important work connections are. When I showed them the plan I had discussed with the funeral home director, John and David were reluctant. The people who didn't even visit him in the hospital suggesting a small, family-only funeral was laughable. They probably didn't want to spend money. It wasn't even their money, but it was so annoying. He was just a small factory owner, right? There's no way that many people will come to this big funeral home. Yeah, it's not like it was a significant factory. Why are we trying to show off? What did you just say? When I raised my eyebrows, David, realizing his slip-up, awkwardly looked away. I knew they looked down on the factory, but this was the first time they had said it so plainly. They had grown up on the money from that factory, still getting allowances at 25 years old. How did they turn out like this? Well, anyway, I'm against it. We don't need such a large-scale funeral. What does John, who knows nothing about the company, understand? I work in sales at a major trading company. I've attended more of these events than you. I know better than you. John didn't say it as bluntly as David, but it was clear he looked down on the factory too. John's face turned red as he glared at me angrily. If there's not enough money, I won't contribute at all. It's Jessica's fault for wanting to show off. I was dumbfounded that he could say that after making me pay for his motorcycle and golf expenses, claiming they were necessary for work. How many times had John asked me to help for the sake of his work success? The money I had given little by little now amounted to a significant sum. It was enough to cover another funeral of the scale John was begrudging. Don't worry, the company will handle the funeral, and I'll pay for anything that comes up, so it's fine. Do whatever you want. You always told me to stop wasting money, but now you're spending it on this? He also seemed unhappy about me spending money. Do they really think that our parents' money is their own? Grandpa is the president. This isn't wasting money. David, it's pointless to argue. Let's go. I should be the one saying that. They glared at me with resentment before leaving the room. They're probably going to say they're working, but actually go somewhere to have fun. They planned to attend the funeral, so I had to tolerate it. Once they stopped interfering with the funeral arrangements, everything proceeded smoothly. Things were a bit awkward at home, but I was too busy to pay attention. I handled the household chores as a minimum, but beyond that, I was swamped with Dad's funeral preparations and my own work. On the day of the funeral, John and David were astonished at the turnout. So many people showed up. There are even politicians and celebrities. Isn't that the president of Dad's company? The funeral hall I had arranged was filled with people. For the two who had belittled Dad's small factory and company, it was unexpected. John hurried over to greet his company's president. Thank you for attending, sir. I'm John from the sales department. Ah, yes. I'm very sorry for your loss. He was a remarkable man, and I share your grief. Your words mean a lot. After greeting John, the president cut the conversation short and walked toward me. John watched in surprise. You must be having a hard time after your father's passing. Is Jessica going to take over the factory? We won't know for sure until we read Dad's will, but that's my intention. I see. As managing director, you should be fine. We will support you. The previous president was a great help to us. John and David couldn't understand why the president of a major trading company was speaking to a managing director of a small factory as an equal. However, as soon as I mentioned Dad's will, their attitudes changed. With a sense of unease, I mingled with the guests, sharing memories of Dad. After the funeral, I was left to clean up. David and John hurried home without any intention of helping. From the start, I was the only family member involved in the preparations, so it was expected, but I still felt a strange sense of exhaustion. There are still many things to do, so let's continue tomorrow. Yes, Managing Director. Managing Director, please get some rest today. I thanked the employees who had helped and left the funeral hall. The cleanup was finished earlier than expected, and I looked forward to a rare restful night at home. I'm home. I called out, but there was no reply. I wondered if they were still in a bad mood because of the funeral, but the voices coming from the living room sounded odd. Curious, I peeked in. David and John were talking excitedly. That factory is worth more than we thought. I thought it was insignificant, but maybe we were wrong. We should have considered working there. As family, promotions are guaranteed. Hearing their words clearly, I was stunned into silence. I couldn't let them take over the factory and company we had fought so hard to protect, treating it as a game. And thinking that being family guaranteed promotions was a huge mistake. That's right. It's only because Mom is a woman that she's the managing director. The employees would prefer a male president. Their dismissive words about me and the company made my body tremble with anger. Taking childcare leave and still getting promoted must be nice. Men can't get ahead even if they work hard without taking any leave. Childcare leave isn't the kind of break they think it is. It's more like taking a break from one job to do another. I was painfully aware of my failures in raising my children. How could they have grown up to be so narrow-minded and outdated? And to top it off, they even looked down on their own mother, mocking me. Well, it's not too late. Why not help Mom out and change jobs? After all, everything will be yours eventually. His behavior was largely influenced by John. John never helped with childcare or housework, but he always indulged David in expensive hobbies whenever he felt like it. This has been the case since David was a child, and it hasn't changed even now. That's true. Next president has a nice ring to it. I'll talk to Mom about it. The comfortable lives of them were built on my sacrifices. It was at that moment that the words I had been trying to avoid thinking about finally took shape in my mind. If things continued like this, I would be trampled by them forever. Moreover, the factory and company that my parents and I, along with our employees, had worked so hard to protect were being treated like toys by John and David. Many people worked there, relying on their jobs for their livelihoods and finding meaning in their work. I couldn't let my mistakes affect our employees. I quietly made up my mind and walked past the living room where the two men were chatting. Since I was planning to stay over for the funeral preparations, I had already packed some of my things. Maybe because I had been contemplating divorce deep down. I could gather my things quickly. 3 seconds later, I was out of the house. They didn't even notice. Without looking back, I got into my car. Since it was convenient, I decided to go back to my dad's house, where he lived alone. Selling it was out of the question with all the memories attached, and it was spacious enough. Although it felt a bit too large for one person, Dad was well known in the town, and many people felt it would be a shame to sell the house. I had already been staying over when Dad's health was poor, so I was all set to live there. I mailed the divorce papers to our house. The day after I left, John called me multiple times. "Hello, Jessica. Where are you?" The loud voice on the other end of the phone startled me, making me feel suspicious. "Where?" "At my dad's." "Have the divorce papers not arrived yet?" "Divorce papers? What are you talking about? I haven't heard anything." He was clearly flustered. He must be worried about losing his cash cow. I let out a big sigh. The differences in our sense of money have become too much to overlook lately. The kids are grown up now, so it's fine. You two can enjoy yourselves. What the? No, wait, let's talk. I'll fix my mistakes. He didn't yell angrily as usual. Since he saw me as a money tree, he forced himself to sound sweet and try to appease me. And David was no different. "Mom, leaving suddenly like this isn't fair. Come back, let's talk. We're family, right?" "David, you're 25 now. You should be able to manage without Mom. Stand on your own." Standing on my own and Mom leaving are two different things. We're family. It's lonely without you, regardless of independence. Even he, usually so arrogant, was now acting humble. Despite always leaving the household matters to me and spending all their time having fun. They had been looking down on my workplace and me, acting as if they were superior. Now, their attitude had completely changed, talking about feeling lonely, being a family, wanting to discuss things. It was too late for that now. I felt nauseous thinking that behind their change in attitude, they were seeing my father's company. But I lived at my parents' house. They knew the address, so if I tried to outright refuse them, they would just show up at my doorstep. After some consideration, I decided to talk with them. "All right. But remember, I want a divorce." Oh. Understood. Let's just talk first." Both John and David were underestimating me. They were in sales and believed they could talk their way out of anything, thinking they could easily persuade me if we met in person. They were in for a surprise. I was fed up with them. To completely cut ties, I started preparing for the meeting. The meeting was set for 3 days later. Despite their usual excuses of being too busy or having work, they quickly agreed to meet. I wanted a week to prepare, but they didn't allow it. They must have thought they could talk me into anything with the two of them against me. They probably suspected I would seek advice and gain insight if given a week. I had planned to do exactly that. However, if my way of confronting them head-on was blocked, I would find another way. By the time I said I wanted a divorce, I was already preparing. The plan was just accelerated, which was no inconvenience to me. "I've brought a lawyer. Nice to meet you today." It was a lawyer who had helped us a lot with company matters. Very famous locally and strong in divorce cases. John and David seemed intimidated by the mention of a lawyer. Hey, that's a bit aggressive, isn't it? Bringing a lawyer to a family discussion?" Their nervous laughter was pitiful. Their voices shook. They were likely more unprepared than they had thought. "I told you, I want a divorce. If you won't agree, this is normal." "Mom, do you really want to cut ties with us that badly?" David looked at me with a sad expression. Before, I might have been swayed by this, but after hearing their conversation in the living room, I felt no affection for my husband or my son. "Yes. If you think you can climb the company ladder just because you're family, then of course I want to cut ties." "What?" David's face turned red, and he fell silent. He never imagined I had overheard their conversation that day. Despite me being out that day, they didn't suspect a thing. "Jessica, why would you?" "Oh, I came back without you noticing, and you were too engrossed in your conversation." I was truly appalled. "I don't want either of you to lay a finger on that company." John looked like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. To add to the pressure, the lawyer handed John some papers. "Since the beginning of your marriage, I've been informed that you've been asking Jessica for money for work purposes. Jessica kept detailed records of the amounts, the dates, and the purposes you stated. We would like you to return the total amount. If you comply, we will not seek additional compensation in the divorce proceedings. What? Money? John snatched the papers and stared at them intently. It was an invoice for the same amount as Dad's funeral, which he had angrily refused to pay. But this is… Oh, right. There's money for David too, isn't there? Isn't this child support? I was exasperated by his pathetic excuse. They are really greedy people. Child support doesn't cover things after he became an adult and got a job. Although I could have said that the money for David was excluded, it's already been deducted from the amount. John's face turned pale as he glared at the papers. He seemed incredulous. It looked like he didn't remember exactly how much he had spent on what. Ever since you started working, you always wanted the best shoes, suits, and watches. You kept asking me for money, saying it was for work. I told you I was just lending it, remember? But we're a married couple, helping each other is… I don't recall you ever helping me, John. John always left all the housework and child-rearing to me. Unfortunately, without any witnesses, getting alimony through divorce court would be difficult. Fighting a long court battle with him was too bothersome, so I gave up on alimony. Even this debt repayment request was just harassment. The lawyer promised to collect it, but as long as I could protect Dad's company, I didn't care about it. John fell silent, and I watched him. In the silence, David spoke up. If you want a divorce that badly, talk it out as a couple. But I'm Mom's son, right? Switching jobs and promotions are just temporary phases. I'll change my ways and work hard, so please forgive me. Those words already proved he hadn't changed, but did he understand that? John looked shocked, feeling betrayed. David, are you going to abandon your dad? If you keep making debts like this, Mom will be fed up. I'm Mom's son. Even if you want to cut ties, you can't. It seemed he decided to abandon Dad and cozy up to me, considering the inheritance. He's as shallow as his father. I've been raising him all this time, so why did he turn out like this? Where did I go wrong in raising him? Lately, these thoughts have been consuming me. That's right. You can't cut family ties so easily. John slumped his shoulders, and David smiled. John looked like he was about to grab smiling David. They used to be such a close father and son, but when money gets involved, this is what happens. Selfish people are terrifying. But, David, I don't want someone like you, who just wants to become president or get a promotion, to be involved in Dad's company. What? David's face froze. At the same time, the doorbell rang. John looked puzzled. What? Who could it be at this time? It's a guest I invited. What? John and David visibly panicked. It was too much trouble to explain, so I got up and let the guest in by myself. Thank you for coming, Mr. President. When Jessica consulted me, I couldn't refuse. President. The visitor was the president of the trading company where John worked. An old acquaintance of Dad and a business partner for the factory. John hadn't known until the funeral, but we had been close for quite some time. But just like the lawyer, he was merely an acquaintance of Dad's. I heard that one of our employees is causing trouble. I'm sorry about that. No, it's my husband, so you don't need to worry about it, sir. Rather, I'm sorry for causing you trouble. It's fine. The previous president took good care of me, and I want to maintain a long relationship with your company. The president, with a kind smile, looked at John. In front of his employer, John straightened his posture, beads of cold sweat running down his face. Your name is John, right? Someone like you, who doesn't know what to do, is a problem for our company. I'm sorry, but can you give up? Huh? You mean the factory? Seeing John's surprise, the president sighed deeply and shook his head. John, unable to confront the president due to his position, seemed confused about the situation. The previous president was good at separating personal and professional matters. Because of that, Jessica ended up marrying someone like you. We were fortunate that we couldn't stop our dealings with you due to your misunderstanding and rudeness. What does that mean? David, right? You're from Smith Trading Sales Department. Mr. Smith wants to talk to you too. Here, the phone is connected. Have a word with him. Wah! Oh, okay. Just having the president in the room changed the atmosphere drastically. With a face like a kind uncle, the president handed his mobile phone to David. Smith Trading's president is also one of our business partners. Mr. Smith will probably tell David the same thing. John, divorce Jessica. But this is a family matter. But John, you care about that company, right? Then you can't stay. Even if you didn't care, you still can't. David and John, you're not fit for management. The current president's words carried a different weight. John was at a loss for words, desperately searching for a rebuttal. John, do you know how many patents that company holds? Jessica is already managing those patents. Even one of those patents is a national treasure. It's extremely valuable. We can't have someone who doesn't understand that value around her. Hearing about the patents for the first time, John was frozen in shock, his mouth agape. Ignoring John's bewilderment, the president continued in a relaxed tone. Do you understand? Mishandling even one patent could harm not just our company, but her company and the country. We can't let someone who doesn't understand that be involved with that company. David was probably hearing the same thing from his own president. Seeing John still trying to argue, the president declared, "If you don't want to end up in dire straits, stop being greedy." It was as if he was saying, if you keep getting involved, you'll be crushed. The president was in a position to make that happen. John probably thought of the faces of those who attended Dad's funeral. If all the other company presidents, lawyers, politicians, and famous people shared the president's view, John and David would be like paper blown away by the wind. I understand. Imagining his own downfall, John lowered his head and weakly uttered. David, who was told the same by his own president, also promised not to get involved with me anymore. After that, I was able to get a divorce and have the money John owed me repaid. John and David were demoted due to the recent scandal and were forced to relocate. John was transferred to the distant south, while David was sent to the far north. On top of that, they were assigned to dead-end jobs, with significantly lower salaries and no prospects for promotion. It's unsettling to leave them unchecked. We plan to keep them on board. Mr. Smith had the same idea. Feeling an immense sense of dread from the CEO's words, I nonetheless accepted his offer with gratitude, knowing it was a lifeline. I planned to repay this debt by supporting the company Dad left behind. Freed from John and David, I threw myself into my work, living a fulfilling life every day. It's the company my dad and mom left behind. Some people even say this company is a treasure of America. The factory that John and David mocked is my lifeblood and one of the small and medium-sized businesses that quietly support America. Even just one patent is considered a national treasure. With the CEO's words in my heart, I strive to work hard every day. Maria, I'm sorry, but could you go grocery shopping for dinner instead of me? I'll write down the necessary ingredients. Having just been discharged from the hospital and not feeling completely well, I asked my daughter-in-law Maria, who lives with us. Then Maria, whether she was listening to me or not, noticed the paper bag placed next to the table. What's this? It's almost Henry's birthday, isn't it? I thought I'd give this to him as a present. My eldest grandson Henry loves superhero shows and had wanted the combining robot that appears in the show for a while. Imagining Henry's delighted face, I suddenly wanted to see him, so I reached for my laptop. A while later, as I was laughing and engrossed in the laptop screen, "Is this a jab at me for not having children?" She said that and kicked the box with the combining robot in the paper bag with all her might. The box, following gravity, crashed to the floor with a loud noise. "How could you do that?" He's your adorable nephew too, isn't he? Henry's mother is Maria's biological sister. At that moment, I felt pain around my stomach and grimaced. Suddenly feeling a lot of stress might have affected my recently operated stomach. The doctor had told me to rest for 2 weeks after being discharged, but while I was away, the house had been overflowing with garbage and laundry, and I had just finished tidying up. Holding my stomach with one hand and using the other to support myself on the wall or table, I tried to sit on the sofa. Don't sit down. Do the piled-up housework. That's the only reason you're in this house. Maria, instead of helping me, stretched out both legs on the sofa to prevent me from sitting down. My name is Jane, a housewife in her 70s. My husband Tom has been a local police officer for many years, and even after retirement, he trains new recruits. Tom and I have 2 sons, both of whom are over 30 and married. My eldest son David has been serious since childhood, similar to his father. He left our hometown to attend university and got a job at a company in Boston after graduating. He is an elite who excels at his job but doesn't neglect family time, bringing a bouquet home for his wife Karen's birthday every year. They have a daughter and a son in elementary school. Since there is a distance between my hometown and Boston, it's difficult for the busy David and his family to visit frequently, but now it's a convenient era with video calls. Recently, I find myself talking more with Karen than with David, and before I know it, we chat for 2 or 3 hours. My other son, Sam, married a woman named Maria about 6 months after David's wedding. Maria is actually Karen's biological sister. Sam fell in love with Maria at first sight when she was sitting on the groom's side at David and Karen's wedding. Sam has been timid since childhood, unable to approach girls he liked in class. Even as an adult, this didn't change, and though he was interested in Maria, he would only look at her from a distance at family gatherings, hardly exchanging words. The first person to notice Sam's behavior was Karen, my eldest daughter-in-law, who teased him. "Sam, do you have something you want to say to Maria?" Sam's face turned bright red, and in a burst of courage, he confessed, "I like you, Maria. Please go out with me with marriage in mind." He confessed in front of all the relatives watching, causing a huge commotion among everyone present. After thinking for a while, Maria smiled and nodded. "Yes, I'd love to." Sam and Maria's marriage was decided immediately. Afterward, Sam and Maria started living with us at our home. I can never forget the shock of Maria's first visit to our house. "Congratulations! You've passed. The house is clean, and Jane's cooking is good, so it's above average." Having hardly spoken with her before, I was surprised by such a sudden remark, but I could only force a smile, thinking it was her way of joking. Even after marrying Sam and starting to live with us, she didn't do any housework. Instead, she left all the chores, including cooking, laundry, cleaning, and grocery shopping, entirely to me, while she lay on the sofa watching TV. Seeing Maria lounging and munching on snacks, I couldn't help but be amazed. "If you don't move around, you'll put on extra weight," I cautioned her jokingly. Most people would take that as a hint to help out, but unfortunately, not Maria. Suddenly, she stood up, grabbed a branded bag, put on flashy makeup, and stormed out of the house, not returning for a long time. Yet, as if timing it perfectly with Sam and Tom's return home, she would be back before nightfall. To everyone else in the family, it seemed like she was a diligent wife who did housework all day. I'm in my 70s now and don't know how much longer I'll live. I'm worried about how Sam and Maria will manage after I'm gone. Ideally, I want them to move out and live independently, so I hinted this to Maria. I'd like to do that too, but financially, it's difficult right now. Prices are high these days. She stared intently at me as she said that. Every time she said that, I could only nod and say, "Well, it can't be helped then." But thinking it over, Sam should have a stable income from his job at a local company. They should be able to manage a modest living on their own. My doubts about her didn't end there. Whenever I took my eyes off Maria for a moment, she was always on her smartphone, seemingly in contact with someone. She would show a smile that she never displayed to our family, but once she noticed my gaze, she would hurriedly move to another room. One time, while she was in the bath, her smartphone rang repeatedly. Out of curiosity, I glanced at the screen and saw the name Alex displayed. When Maria came out of the bathroom, I told her, "Someone named Alex called you several times." I meant it as a kind gesture, but Maria's face turned red with anger. "How dare you look at someone else's smartphone? That's the lowest!" she yelled furiously. "There's no need to get so angry. Do you have something to hide?" "Shut up! It's none of your business, Jane!" Lately, Maria had stopped being polite to me even in her language. When Sam came home, I subtly suggested he should talk to Maria, but timid Sam couldn't stand up to her. "Well, that's a bit." He would just laugh it off. With Maria complaining a lot but doing nothing, I found myself sighing more and more. One day, as I was washing the lunch dishes, I felt a sharp pain in my abdomen. "Maria, I'm sorry, but could you take over? My stomach feels strange," I asked Maria, who was lying on the sofa, as I tried to rest. For about half a month, I had been experiencing occasional abdominal pain, but that day it felt particularly severe. "What? Why should I do something so troublesome? Just buy a dishwasher." She refused to move, as usual. The pain intensified, making it hard to stand. "Maria, can you call an ambulance? Something feels really wrong today. It's different from usual." Unable to bear it, I collapsed to the floor and pleaded. Maria, staring at her smartphone, exclaimed, "Oh my God! Really?" "Yes." She was excitedly distracted. "Sorry, Jane, I just got some urgent plans. Can you manage until next time?" She went to the bedroom to change clothes and then left for an outing, leaving me incapacitated on the floor. Fortunately, a neighbor happened to come by and noticed me, quickly calling an ambulance. At the hospital, I had to undergo emergency surgery. It's a very rare case, but excessive stress caused a stomach ulcer, which rapidly worsened, creating a perforation and bleeding. The surgery was successful, but the doctor said I would need to stay in the hospital for 3 weeks. Under the influence of anesthesia and feeling drowsy, I overheard my family's conversation during their visit. "This happened while I was out shopping. If only I had noticed sooner, this wouldn't have happened." Maria was desperately apologizing in a tearful voice. Hearing this, Tom spoke kindly. "Don't blame yourself so much. Maria, you were just helping out with the shopping because Jane asked you to, right? You did nothing wrong." "That's right. Maria was doing her part. There's nothing to blame her for." Tom and Sam continued to comfort the crying Maria. In my mind, I kept repeating, "No, that's not true. It's all lies." But my voice couldn't reach my family. For about 3 weeks, I was hospitalized, and during that time, Maria never once came to visit me. On the day of my discharge, Tom took a break from work to come and pick me up in the car. "Don't overdo it. Jane, you're recovering now, and you're not as strong as before. The doctor said you need to rest for about 2 weeks even after you get home." I know. You don't have to keep reminding me. But thank you. I didn't realize you were so worried about me." "Of course I worry. We're family. And it's not just me. Sam and Maria are worried about you too. Even David and Karen in Boston have been calling every day to check on you. The grandchildren are also praying for your speedy recovery." I was very happy to know that everyone was thinking of me so much, but I couldn't accept Maria's concern so easily. I didn't know what she had told Tom and Sam, but it seemed she had earned their complete trust. Just thinking about Maria made my stomach hurt again, and I winced. "What's wrong? Is it hurting again? Don't push yourself too hard. If anything happens, just let me know." I'll leave work and come running. I felt the urge to reveal her true nature, but I didn't want to worry Tom, who was being so kind, so I decided to keep it to myself. Henry's birthday is coming up soon, isn't it? Did you get the robot he wanted? Of course. There were similar toys lined up, so I was a bit confused at first. But when I showed the image to the store clerk, they explained it clearly. The paper bag in the back seat is it. Henry is the son of our eldest son and his wife, and he will soon be turning 7. I had heard from Karen that he wanted a combining robot from a superhero show. Tom dropped me off in front of our house and then headed to work. I entered our home for the first time in 3 weeks. The first thing that hit me was the smell of instant noodles. Dust had accumulated in the corners of the hallway. Sighing, I headed to the living room, and as I expected, Maria was sprawled on the sofa. The TV was so loud that she didn't immediately notice my return. "Oh, you're back already?" she said without even looking my way. I set the bag with the robot aside and went to the kitchen, where I saw a trash bag stuffed with instant noodle cups and deli containers. "Have you been eating this every day while I was gone? Did Tom and Sam eat this too?" "I've never cooked before. As long as our stomachs are full, it doesn't matter, right? And I did serve the deli food on plates for Tom and Sam. They probably didn't realize it was store-bought deli food. As long as they're full, it doesn't matter anyway." There were flies swarming around the garbage bag, so I immediately closed it and sprayed insecticide. Next, I went to the laundry room, where a pile of dirty laundry was emitting a foul odor. I loaded the washing machine several times, and while the laundry was being washed, I cleaned the floors. Years of habit kicked in, and as soon as I finished one task, I moved on to the next, ignoring the doctor's advice to rest for 2 weeks. I hung the laundry to dry and then planned to go shopping for dinner. Maybe it was because of the recent surgery or my age, but I noticed I was more out of breath than usual and felt a bit dizzy. Perhaps it was too soon to push myself. "Maria, I'm sorry, but could you go shopping for dinner in my place? I'll make a list of the necessary ingredients," I asked. Maria, seemingly oblivious to my request, noticed the paper bag on the table. "What's that?" "It's for Henry's upcoming birthday. I thought he'd like it," I replied, imagining Henry's delighted face and suddenly wanting to see him. I reached for my laptop. While I was laughing at something on the screen, Maria looked at the bag and sneered. "Is this a dig at me for not having children?" She then kicked the box containing the toy robot, sending it crashing to the floor with a loud thud. "How could you do that? Henry is your adorable nephew too," I exclaimed, feeling a sharp pain in my stomach. The stress seemed to be affecting my freshly operated stomach. Holding my abdomen with one hand and using the other to brace against the wall and table, I tried to sit on the sofa. "Don't sit down. You're here to do housework. That's the only reason you're in this house." Maria not only refused to help me, but she also insulted me further and deliberately stretched out her legs on the sofa so that I couldn't sit down. With nothing left to lean on, my body suddenly felt heavier, and I couldn't support myself on my legs, collapsing onto the floor. Maria, without offering a hand, barely opened her eyes and said to me, "Hurry up and go shopping before it gets dark." Ignoring my distress, Maria seemed ready to fall asleep. At that moment, right next to Maria, "What do you think you're doing?" I heard a low female voice filled with a mix of surprise and anger saying. Maria and I were supposed to be alone, yet the voice was clear and unmistakable. "What? Whose voice was that?" Maria, startled, sat up and looked around in confusion. Maria eventually realized that the voice had come from the open laptop on the table. She stammered, "Karen," in a trembling voice, and then fell silent. While Maria was in the bathroom, I had been consulting with Karen over a video call about Henry's birthday. We were discussing the best time to give him his present, to ensure a delightful surprise. That's why the laptop was open. As Maria stared in shock at the screen, I could almost see right through her thoughts. She was wondering when the video call had started, and how much Karen had witnessed of her behavior towards me. To add to her panic, I said, "She saw everything. She knows what you've done." "No, that's not true. Karen, you didn't see anything, did you?" Maria's words were more a desperate plea than a confirmation. Karen's clear voice cut through the tension. "It's true. I saw everything she did from start to finish." Faced with this undeniable reality, Maria let out a scream and bolted for the front door. But standing there was an elderly couple. "I need to talk to you," shouted Ben, Maria's father, as he grabbed her arm and dragged her back inside. Next to him, Maria's mother, Rebecca, had a stern expression unlike her usual gentle demeanor. Rebecca rushed to me as I lay curled up in pain on the living room floor. "Ben, we need an ambulance, now," she cried. At that voice, Ben took out his smartphone to call for help, but before he could, a dependable voice came from the laptop. "That's not necessary. The ambulance is already on its way," said the ever-reliable Karen. "I'm fine. But why are you here?" I asked, surprised by their sudden arrival. "We came to celebrate your discharge from the hospital. Just before we arrived, Karen called us to say something was wrong," Rebecca explained. "Thank you, Karen. You've been a great help," I said, grateful. "That's fine. But what happened? Please tell my parents everything Maria did to you," Karen urged. I nodded slightly and turned my gaze to Maria, who remained silent in the corner of the living room. "Actually, Maria," I began, recounting everything she had done to me. "Is this true, Maria?" Ben demanded, his fists clenched in anger. "Maria!" he shouted, glaring at her furiously. Tom returned home from work just then. "What happened here?" "Tom, actually," Ben began, explaining everything that had occurred. Maria, terrified by the presence of Tom, a former police officer, attempted to flee the house again, but Tom's sharp command, "Don't move," froze her in place. "It's all lies. Jane made it all up. She's trying to make me look like the bad guy to get everyone's sympathy." Maria desperately tried to defend herself, but her efforts were in vain. "I recorded everything you did and said. There's no escaping it now," Karen said through the video call. Maria, realizing her defeat, sat down on the floor in resignation. "Maria, how could you do such a terrible thing to Jane? You just left her suffering like that? What if something had happened to her?" Tom demanded. "I don't care what happens to Jane," Maria shouted. "I was relieved when she got discharged and could manage the household again, but she seemed slower than before, and it frustrated me to watch. And then she tried to make me go grocery shopping for dinner. She was trying to take it easy while dumping all the troublesome tasks on me, so I got angry and kicked the toy lying around." Maria explained her motives, but no matter how hard I tried to understand her reasoning, I couldn't make sense of it. "Utterly selfish," Tom muttered. "Exactly. Jane did nothing wrong. It's all Maria's fault," Karen added, sighing. "To think someone like this is part of my family, my own sister. I can't believe it," Karen continued, exasperated. Ben and Rebecca nodded in agreement. Ben and Rebecca then turned to me and apologized in unison. "We are deeply sorry for the terrible actions of our daughter. We truly apologize." Ben, with a trembling voice, expressed his apologies, and Rebecca, her shoulders shaking, repeatedly said, "I'm so sorry. It must have been really hard for you," in a comforting manner. "You don't need to apologize so much. The pain has eased a bit now. Thank you for coming here for me today. I'm sorry I couldn't do anything to help," I said. At that moment, the sound of an ambulance siren finally reached us, and I was taken to the hospital again. Fortunately, there was no damage to the surgical site, but the doctor decided I should stay overnight for observation. Ben and Rebecca came to the hospital as well. We'll make sure Maria is thoroughly re-educated, Ben promised with a voice filled with a mix of anger and remorse. A few days later, I had fully recovered physically and was able to do household chores as before. Feeling mentally refreshed as well, I decided to reach out to Karen in Boston for the first time in a while. On the other side of the video call were Ben and Rebecca as well. I apologize for the terrible things Maria has done recently, they said, to which I replied with a smile. Please stop already. We promised before, but we are in the process of re-educating Maria. However, if we determine that there is no effect, we are considering divorce with Sam. What do you think? Ben said apologetically, and I nodded to Tom. If it comes to that, it can't be helped. Agreeing with their suggestion. In fact, we had already discussed it with Sam, and knowing Maria's true nature, I want to separate from Maria, he had clearly said. So, we would like to cover all the medical expenses. We will pay you later. Not at all. There's no need for that. Fortunately, the doctor said there was no issue with the surgical scar, so you really don't need to worry. But given the circumstances, even though there were no post-surgery issues, isn't it possible that leaving someone in pain could be a crime? Ben, looking worried, confirmed with Tom, who was a former police officer. Indeed, there is video evidence, and depending on the situation, it could potentially lead to criminal charges. However, Jane's injury was very minor, so there is no need for that. Tom gently smiled, and I quietly held his hand. If it became a criminal case, Ben and Rebecca would inevitably be involved in interviews and trials, causing them considerable stress. Tom wasn't protecting Maria, but was trying to handle things smoothly to avoid burdening the elderly Ben and Rebecca. However, Maria hadn't returned home even once since that day, showing no signs of remorse. If Maria comes your way, please contact us anytime, Ben said angrily. A week later, Rebecca contacted me saying they had found Maria's whereabouts. After the previous video call, feeling responsible, Ben and Rebecca had hired a private investigator at their own expense to find Maria, who turned out to be living with her ex-boyfriend Alex. Moreover, their relationship had secretly continued even after Maria married Sam, with frequent hotel meetings. Sam wasn't particularly handsome, but he had a decent salary, so I married him, Maria reportedly said without any sign of regret after being brought back home. On the day I collapsed from a stomach ulcer, Maria had left me unattended to go to a concert of her favorite idol, invited by Alex, who had gotten a sudden ticket. Thinking that Sam and Maria's inability to leave home despite a stable income was due to Maria's excessive spending habits made everything clear. I could have endured it if it were just me, but I was furious that Maria had also deceived Sam. Maria has no hope for rehabilitation. There is no problem with getting a divorce, right? Ben confirmed again. There's no need to confirm, I said with a clear intention and nodded. A few months later, after much deliberation, Sam and Maria's divorce was officially finalized. Maria was ordered to pay a substantial amount of compensation to both Sam and me, but being unemployed, she couldn't afford it, so her parents had to cover the costs. According to Karen, Maria is now working at a lodge in a remote mountain area, slowly repaying the money her parents had advanced. When Alex found out about Maria's huge debt, he abandoned her easily and is now completely out of touch, but I don't care about that. With Maria gone, our home finally regained its peace and quiet. Sam doesn't seem to be dwelling on the divorce anymore, which is a relief to me. It was a good lesson. I'm really sorry for dragging you into this, Mom. Sam laughed off the painful past. Jane, it's Henry. Henry wants to talk to you. Tom, who has fully retired from his job with the police and is enjoying a leisurely retirement, is now completely absorbed in the grandchildren on the other side of the video call. Jane, thank you as always. The delicious vegetables you sent us this month were a big help. Next to him, the grandchildren were waving their hands with smiles. Look! This fusion robot is super cool, Henry said, clearly thrilled with the fusion robot he received for his birthday, which made me smile with joy. The fusion robot Maria had one arm and part of its back wings broken. Maria's parents offered to replace it with a new one, but Sam, after carefully examining the broken robot, said, "There's no need for that," and skillfully repaired it. The broken screw had an identical replacement, so I used that. The plastic wing was partially broken, but I fixed it with super glue. I think it looks fine. Sam, who was timid as a child, was oddly skilled at assembling and repairing radio-controlled cars and plastic models. I never imagined that this would come in handy when he grew up. Henry spends all his time playing with this toy after he gets home from school. Karen laughed, somewhat exasperated. Grandpa, thank you so much. I'll treasure this fusion robot forever. We're so glad to hear that. But make sure you finish your homework before playing. I promise. Oh, and I won first place at the sports day event recently. That's wonderful, Henry. I wish I could have been there to see it. And so, Tom and I enjoyed another day of video calls with Karen and the grandchildren. Mom, this is where we part ways. Monica, what do you mean, part ways? She threw her bag and left me behind in the park. I never imagined that I would leave the house in such a way. Still, God was watching over me. When one door closes, another opens. Thanks to a kind angel who reached out to me, I found the greatest happiness. My name is Gianna. I just turned 70. 5 days a week, I volunteer to watch over the children on their way to school, greeting them and offering words of encouragement. Are you a first grader? A small girl, struggling to keep up with the older students at the front of the group. Good morning! She greeted me with a bright, sunny smile. Gianna, how have you been? Has your cough improved? Well, nights are still a bit tough, but seeing the children's smiles is the best medicine for me. And it's all thanks to Martez for getting me involved in volunteering. Martez, who lives nearby, was my late husband's childhood friend. He lost his wife to illness 10 years ago and has been living alone since. Oh, by the way, I heard that someone new is taking over your restaurant. What? The restaurant he was referring to was the one I used to run. I closed it down shortly after my husband passed away a year ago, and it's been vacant ever since. It's a bit sad to think of it passing into someone else's hands. Are you still attached to that place? Not really, but I did wish Kyrie would take over. I guess I am a bit sentimental. Kyrie was my son's high school classmate and former girlfriend. She helped out at the restaurant since her high school days and continued to visit and help even after she graduated from college and became a working adult. She once said, "When you close the restaurant, I will take over." I thought there was nothing more delightful than my daughter-in-law taking over the place I inherited from my mother-in-law. But unfortunately, that dream never came true. By the way, how is D'Angelo doing with his work these days? Who knows? When will he ever get his act together? D'Angelo is my only son. Gianna, I'm going to be a big shot someday, and I'll make sure you live comfortably. My son, whose catchphrase has always been about becoming big, is a self-proclaimed comedian. I was shocked when he suddenly declared his intention to become a comedian at the age of 40. When he told us he was dropping out of college to pursue comedy, my husband was furious. Do you think we sent you to college just so you could become a comedian? Making a living as a comedian isn't that easy. If you insist on doing it, leave this house. My stubborn husband, Yancey, issued this ultimatum to our son. But even until just before he passed away, Yancey was concerned about our son's future. It is often said that children don't live up to their parents' expectations. My son has accomplished little over the years. I've seen him on TV only once. And it wasn't as a comedian but as an extra in a drama, just the back of a passerby. He claims he performs in rural areas and small stages, but it's unclear whether he is truly active as a comedian. 8 years ago. Mom, I think I want to get married. I suddenly received a call from my son. I was so happy I could dance, thinking Kyrie would finally become part of our family. But the woman my son brought home was someone I'd never seen before. I hate to say it, but I was shocked because I had always thought it would be Kyrie. Since then, Kyrie stopped coming to the store. After that, my son's marriage didn't last long, and they divorced in 2 years. And less than a year after that divorce, he got married for the second time. Then a year and a half ago, he got married for the third time. His current wife is Monica. She's 26 years old, more than a decade younger than my son, who is 40 and still doesn't have a steady job. I can't understand what she sees in him, but I'm grateful she likes him. At first, I was surprised by Monica's flashy makeup, but it's her style. She's cheerful and innocent, with a bright and straightforward personality. I thought we'd get along well. I started living with my son and his wife about 6 months ago. My son suggested it because he was worried about me living alone after Yancy passed away. If we live together, can I leave the house chores to you, Gianna? Of course. They say those who do not work shall not eat, you know. Is that a dig at me, Gianna? Oh, you noticed? I initially declined the offer, thinking I preferred living alone, but it might not be so bad after all. However, by the second day of living together, I already began to regret it. Gianna, why did you wash our clothes together with yours? Monica stormed into the kitchen where I was cooking dinner, looking angry as soon as she came back from work. Why? Well, I thought it would be rude to leave the laundry in the machine, so I just washed everything together. I didn't wash them together deliberately. If you don't want me to wash your clothes, please put them in a separate basket next time. Even so, you should have asked me first. She muttered like she was chanting a spell, heading to the bathroom, then she quickly came back. One more thing. Please take your bath last. What? I don't want to soak in the tub after you. It's fine for now since I only need a shower, but please, go last. She was treating me like I was dirty. At that moment, as if on cue. I'm home. Oh, I'm starving. My clueless son came home. Gianna, I'm home. Oh, welcome back. D'Angelo, welcome home. Wow, my favorite steak. Let me have a taste. Delicious. I noticed Monica glaring at him while he happily ate the food I made. Before living together, I thought her expressive emotions and straightforwardness were her charms, but now it's hard to deal with her constant outbursts. Sigh. Compared to when I ran the diner, I should be much more relaxed, but by the time I get to bed, I'm exhausted. I don't know when it started, but I began coughing once I got into bed, and the cough wouldn't stop, leading to sleepless nights. Gianna, are you okay with that cough? One night, my son came into the room after coming home late. Oh, this cough. The doctor said it might be a recurrence of my asthma attacks, but I'm fine. Don't worry. The doctor had told me that changes in environment and stress could trigger the attacks, but I kept that part to myself. Well, that's good to hear. You need to live a long life. Just hang in there a bit longer. I'll become a big star and make life easy for you. Oh? Since when did you upgrade from big to big star? Let's see, when did that happen? For a man, the bigger the dream, the better, right? Honestly, I don't expect you to make my life easy. I'm living on a pension now, but if push comes to shove, I have enough money to move into a facility. But Mom, listen to me until the end. What I want most is for you to get a stable job and build a normal family. A fourth time is out of the question, please. At that moment, I was already thinking about leaving this house and living on my own. A few days later, on Sunday. Gianna, I'm off work today, so how about we go for lunch and do some shopping afterward? Usually grumpy in the mornings, Monica suddenly invited me out cheerfully. Gianna, you should go. I'll be on a sales trip from today for a while, so you two have fun. Monica's unusual behavior made me slightly suspicious, but doubting her wouldn't do any good. Monica, thank you. Then I'll take you up on that offer. I gladly accepted my wife's invitation. We went out in her car. We had lunch at a chic Western-style restaurant, did some shopping, and had a wonderful time. Gianna, shall we head home soon? Yes, thank you so much for today. I had a great time. We chatted about nothing in particular as we made our way back home. All right, Gianna. Please get out here. What? She stopped the car at the entrance to a park, not at our house. Gianna, this is where we part ways. Monica, what do you mean? I can't take care of you, Gianna. Absolutely not. Why this all of a sudden? Your coughing has been keeping me up at night. If I catch something bad and it affects the baby, it would be a disaster. Monica! You're pregnant? Anyway, so as not to burden us, please find somewhere else to live, either an apartment or a facility. She spat out those words, then opened the passenger window and threw my bag towards the park. Wait a minute, Monica. What are you doing? I hurriedly got out of the car. Gianna, here's a present. Monica tossed the box of cakes I bought from the pastry shop out of the car window towards me. Call me once you've found a place to live. I'll send the rest of your stuff. Take care. With that, she drove off, waving. The cake I bought is all dirty now. I picked up the cake that had fallen out of the box. Grandma, are you okay? Huh? You are. It was the girl who always greeted me cheerfully. Thank you, I'm fine. Don't worry, go play with your friends. Grandma, I'm going home now, so come with me. What? Thank you, but it would surprise your mom if a stranger came along. No, it won't. Mom always says to help out elders in trouble. She'll be happy. Not wanting to reject the girl's kind offer, I agreed. Okay, just for a bit. I said, letting the girl lead me by the hand. This is my house. This is your house? The girl's home was a stylish new high-rise that had been built about 6 months ago. Yeah. She lives at the very top here. We went up to the 14th floor, and I rang the doorbell. What? For a moment, I couldn't understand the situation at all. Why are you here? Grandma, do you know Mom? Yes, I know her. Your mom's name is Kyrie, right? That's right. Standing before me was Kyrie, whom I hadn't seen in 8 years. Georgina. Kyrie, can you let Gianna and I talk for a bit? Go play in your room, okay? Sure, got it. Once inside the living room, I asked her. Is that little girl Georgina? Yes. I always thought she was a cute girl who greeted me cheerfully every morning, but I never imagined she was your child, Kyrie. So, did you get married after that? She answered softly. No, I'm not married. Actually, she is D'Angelo's child. What? D'Angelo's child? So, that means she's my granddaughter. I almost shouted out loud. Yes. I found out I was pregnant shortly after D'Angelo told me he was going to marry another woman. I'm sorry I kept it a secret until now. She told me she had left her job at the securities company to focus on real estate investments she had started while working there. Now, she owns 10 apartment buildings and lives comfortably off the rental income.
Was it tough raising a child on your own?
No, not at all. Gianna.
Yes?
I know it's sudden, but would you like to live with us?
What?
I was surprised by her sudden offer. I heard about your situation from Martez. I thought if you were looking for a place to stay, you could live with us. But I didn't expect to meet you like this.
I see. Martez never mentioned anything about it.
Thank you, Kyrie. But I don't want to be a burden. It's no trouble at all. I lost my parents early on, and my grandmother, who was like a parent to me, passed away before Georgina was born. Now it's just the two of us.
I see. I'm sorry to hear about your grandmother. But what about Georgina? How does she feel about it?
Georgina!
Come here.
Yes. I want to know if you'd like to live with me and her together. What do you think? Georgina put her small hand on her chin and thought for a moment.
Yes. I'm all for it.
She replied with a smile. I've always wanted a grandma. Gianna, will you be my grandma? Looking into her innocent, earnest eyes, there was no way I could say no.
Of course, I'd love to.
I answered with a smile. The next day, I called Monica. Monica? It's me. I've decided to live in the apartment my nephew runs, so could you send my things?
Oh, Gianna, you found a place to move to. Congratulations.
She probably wanted to get my stuff out as soon as possible. 2 days later, I received a call to say my things had arrived. When I opened the boxes brought to the apartment, I was shocked. Among my crumpled clothes, my husband's urn had been carelessly tossed in. It's not just me you're disrespecting, but Yancy too. You'll regret this someday. What I muttered casually soon came to pass. Okay, tomorrow's the first day. Let's give it our all, both of you. But what exactly were we preparing for? The conversation I had with Kyrie that day at her house had more to it. Gianna, how about we run a diner together?
The diner? But that place has already been shut down, and I heard a new tenant has been found.
Yes, I know about that. Because that new tenant is me.
What? It was you?
Yes. I've already completed most of the paperwork and preparations so that we can reopen any time. We're just waiting on you now.
Oh, I see.
That's how the conversation went. The next day, the grand reopening of the diner finally arrived. We wore matching bandanas and aprons that we had prepared for this day, and Martez also came over to help out. Longtime regular customers came in one after another, and we had a great time reminiscing about old times. I couldn't believe I was standing in the diner with Kyrie again, and with my granddaughter, no less. It felt so surreal that I even pinched my cheek to make sure I wasn't dreaming. Day after day, we were busy but fulfilled. One day, out of the blue. Gianna, what are you doing here?
Wait, Gianna. What? Kyrie, why are you here?
It wasn't a setup or anything. My son and his wife had come in as customers. What am I doing? Isn't it obvious? I'm working at this diner. If you're here to eat, sit down quietly. You're bothering the other customers. There was just a little time left until closing. Inside the diner, 3 regulars were still there. My son and his wife noticed the regulars and gave a slight nod before quietly taking a seat at a table.
Gianna, you don't have to treat us like customers. Just continue whatever you were doing.
Then my son, who had been staring at Kyrie, finally spoke up.
Kyrie, where have you been all this time? We've been worried sick because we couldn't get in touch with you.
Where? What?
Do I owe you any explanation?
I had never seen Kyrie speak so coldly and indifferently to my son before.
Like Kyrie said, you call yourself a comedian, but you betrayed the person who stood by your side. Where do you get the nerve to ask her that? It's not like I betrayed her. Hold on, D'Angelo. What's going on? What kind of relationship do you have with that person?
My son was suddenly under a barrage of questions from 3 women.
Don't gang up on me.
He sounded almost like he was about to cry. More importantly, Gianna, are you really commuting here every day from an apartment more than an hour away? He suddenly asked, looking serious.
Yes, I run here every day. Of course not. I live in a luxury apartment not far from here now,
I said, trying to sound a bit like a celebrity.
A luxury apartment.
Yes, on the top floor of a luxury apartment. And it's all thanks to Monica for leaving me in that park back then. Right, Monica?
What?
I gave a sly smile, and she was so startled that she spilled the water from her glass.
Oh, Gianna, I didn't abandon you. I just left you. Ah.
Monica couldn't hide her panic, her eyes darting around. My son, sensing the chance to turn the tables, pressed her for answers.
Monica, what's the meaning of this? Didn't Gianna leave the house on her own?
Feeling cornered, Monica tried to escape the situation.
I need to go to the restroom,
she said, starting to get up from her chair. And at that moment,
I'm home.
My granddaughter Georgina cheerfully returned from school. And then,
oh, it's that person.
She pointed at Monica, raising her voice.
You were the one who left Gianna in the park, right? What? Those panda-like eyes and lips that look like sausages. And the car was red with the number 12-01. My vision is perfect.
I was amazed by my granddaughter's memory. That wasn't the only surprise.
When you do something wrong, you should say sorry. Didn't your teachers teach you that?
She gently scolded Monica, like a mother teaching her child.
Why should I apologize?
Monica continued to be stubborn. Then, Georgina walked over to Monica and gently placed her hand on her back.
Hey!
Monica started crying, like a child being scolded by her mother.
I'm sorry, Gianna.
As expected, my son and his wife got divorced, and Monica left the house. What happened to the child she claimed to be carrying? It turned out she wasn't pregnant at all. It was just an excuse to kick me out of the house. After leaving, Monica tried to find an apartment, but she was rejected everywhere. Of course, all the properties were owned by Kyrie. Meanwhile, my son faced his 3rd divorce.
I'll be Georgina's father. Let's get back together and live as a family.
He begged Kyrie, but she ignored him, and he cried. A fitting end for a man who never learns. It's my own fault. Of course, I haven't told my son about Georgina's real father. Gianna, I have something to discuss with you.
What is it? You look so serious. Is something bothering you?
It's not like that. Actually, I'm thinking of moving out of this apartment.
Why?
I've always dreamed of it. Living in a high-rise apartment, seeing the view from the top. But now, I think a house where the 3 of us can live comfortably would be better.
Oh, that's it. I was worried you didn't want to live with me anymore. No way!
I'm relieved.
To be honest, I'm not very fond of heights. Really? I didn't know that. Kyrie, Gianna, Come here. The stars are beautiful.
We went out to the balcony, and the night sky was full of beautiful stars.
Gianna, that biggest star is Dad.
My granddaughter pointed to a particularly bright star.
The biggest star is Dad.
Yeah.
Kyrie told me that the brightest star is my dad.
The brightest star meaning the biggest star my son was always saying he would become.
I see, that's what it means.
Kyrie and I exchanged a smile.